I don't know if you're familiar with Dan Nigro, but he has won Producer of the Year this last year. I think it was this last year at the Grammys for Chapel Roan, and he's worked with Olivia Rodrigo, tons of other artists that are very, very major, doing pretty amazing things. The guy started out in a band called As Tall as Lions, and way back when he was in that band, because we're both from Long Island, I knew of the band, and the early studio he worked at, I wound up doing a lot of work there also. So I'm very familiar with the dude's work and how talented of a songwriter he is. And for him to win Producer of the Year, that's very cool. I never really knew him. I met him once, briefly for like a second when I was 17 or something, because we just bumped into each other at the same studio. So, but I just wanted to talk about something that he mentioned that I found very interesting, because I know I went through something similar, and I'm sure you guys did also in some way, shape, or form. So check this clip out. Then I'm going to talk about my experience with it also. This is fair use for teaching purposes, fair use for educational purposes. Here we go.
She can come over a week later and I could play her the demo and she'd be like, yeah, that's weird. Yeah, you want to re-sing it? Do you want to rewrite that lyric? Like, a lot of people aren't afforded those opportunities when they're working with an artist, and that, one's in Nashville and you're in LA and you got the demo, and then people are like, where's the demo? And you're like, I subscribe to, like, I won't send it. If someone's like, send us what you got, I'm like, no, because if I send it to you, you're not gonna like it, and then you're gonna tell me you don't like it, and I already know that it's not good. So why would I do that to myself? But if you gave me another 2 hours with your artist, I can fix this song. Like, I'm hearing it clearly what needs to be fixed. I just need a little time to fix it. And I can't do it. I physically can't re-sing this vocal myself. I mean, maybe you can now with AI, but but I'm like, no, I need the artist to come back in the room and we need to rewrite this if you even want to hear the demo,
This is the most valuable thing that you will probably say in this podcast, because I try to tell my producers that are signed to Unknown, and I'm like, hey man, you don't owe anyone this demo.
Right.
If you send, every writer is going to say, can I have this?
Right.
And you can just say, hey, I'm still working on it.
Yeah.
Or you can say no. Or because surprisingly people are like, oh, okay.
Yeah. What are they gonna do? They're not paying you for the song.
Right. And if you send it, all you're doing is setting yourself up for someone to be like, I like the original.
Right.
Or you're setting someone up for, it really takes somebody who's in it with you, who can listen to that demo and be like, how can I beat that? How can I beat that? How can I beat that? Then you can maybe send it to that one artist or that one co-writer. But I'm always trying to get the producer to be like, hey, just send it to me and let's go over notes together before we send it to the artist. Because we'll refine it 10 times on the production side before, the artist hears it. But as soon as they hear it, they're like, it's locked in.
I mean, we never made a demo of Good Luck, Babe. Because it wasn't good enough to make a demo. Yeah. Like when the song was like ready to be listened to by people and it sounded pretty close to what everybody heard, like that's when I made a bounce of it.
Yeah.
It sat on my hard drive for a year and a half.
Yeah.
As literally like a little idea that was sitting on my hard drive, And it wasn't until we found the right key, and then I found because it was just like a little loop, and then when I actually in the room with her started adding some synth strings, just as is this like a string? Are we doing like strings in this song? And she was like, yeah, I like that. And then I kind of just took that idea and ran with it. Okay, this is going to be this Baroque pop thing, But it was never we didn't write it with that intention. That was never the thought when we were writing the song was going to feel like that. Yeah.
Yeah, you can only get that on the fifth time of editing a song. It's weird because if you went in writing that, it would stifle probably melody and lyrics.
Yeah, no, because we wrote the whole song was just over literally a synth loop. It was the chords that you hear in the song was just that on a loop. The chords never changed. And then later on, after we wrote the song, I changed the chords to the pre-chorus.
He's talking about the song "Good Luck, Babe," Chappell Roan. Chapel Roan. Chappell Roan? That's what I see when I see it. I can't help it, but Chapel. So the guy said something very interesting, and I find a lot of people, even when you're just mixing a song for them, they want to hear it. I just want to hear where it's at. Well, a lot of times, if there's other work that's ahead of theirs, you haven't started it yet. And if you did start it yet, it's probably done in a day or so. So the thought that like they need it now, you just really have to reset expectations there. You'll get it when it's done, because until it's done, they won't be able to see the forest. They'll just see the one tree sitting in front of their face when you send them that unfinished work. And sometimes the work could be sitting in a certain place, and all you have to do is a little bit of tweak here and there, and now it sounds the way you want the whole time. Whereas you might know that, so you might err on the side of that and then do something at the end to bring it to where you have to be. I actually know a lot of guys who work like that, where it's sort of like, it's almost like they allow a little, if you were to look at this in like a sports context or something, it's almost like they know where the ball's going to be. So they essentially set everything up in a certain way so that when they, swing the bat, it connects. So they sort of like allow the thing, like putting spin on the ball in a way where it's like, you're going to put it here, but it's going to actually all tie in and fall into place here once I add a few things at the very end. For me, usually that happens with automation. When I take a mix with no automation, the thing is flat. Once I automate everything, all of a sudden life is in it. So that in and of itself is a thing where I save the automation to the end. And if I were to share something with an artist that was very persistent and wanted to hear it before it was done, it wouldn't sound like it does at the end. And you expect somebody to just interpret that and make it in a positive interpretation. It's not going to be. Your best shot at getting people to like whatever it is that you're doing is for them to hear it when you think it's great. You are the decision maker for when is it great before you share it. Now, after you share it, it's all bets are off. The proof is in the pudding. The results speak for themselves. That's how it should be. Never send a mix out with any explanation. Well, if this was better, then everything would be better. And if this was different, then this would... Don't ever do that. Just send the freaking thing out and say, call me. I'd love to hear your opinion. That's really it. Just, call me. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Just something like that. Never any apologies of any kind about anything. So, because all you're doing is really showing your insecurities when you do that. You're just letting everybody know that this isn't good before they even hear it. It's the worst thing you could possibly do. So moving forward, I want to tell you this story, this thing that happened to me. All right. In a similar situation, I was working with an artist, and it was the first time I'd ever done anything with them. I came into the studio. We were writing the song together, and it was just something we created on the spot. And the first time you work with someone, you're really getting a feel for each other and how they like to work and the whole thing. So things are not always super comfortable and smooth sailing. It could be a lot of bumps in that road. So as we're kind of going through it and figuring it out, and I'm trying to be as easygoing as I could possibly be, we kind of stumble into something that was cool, like chord melody wise. And then it became, they wanted to come up with the lyrics. So they asked me to like play this thing a bunch of times. And I just did. I just kept playing the thing, and they were coming up with parts or whatever they thought were cool. And, it wasn't bad. It was going smooth. Everything was fine. It got to a point where I had something else coming in and I had to stop the session. So it was about like, let's continue this at another time. And they left, right? When I go back, a day later or something to listen to what we did, and try to like put something together, because the artist had asked me after they left, can I have a copy of what we did? Now, this is a good example of what he's talking about. When I listened to what we had just done, right, my first thought was, ooh, like, this needs to be changed. This is like the timing was weird. There was some weird stuff about where certain things were that little bits of tweaking, and I'm talking about an hour of a resing or a half hour, like not even that long, could have all of a sudden brought to life the vision that I believe we both had in the room. So my philosophy, at that point is, you live 10 minutes away. They literally lived 10 minutes away. I was like, when are you free? Because there's just something we have to change. There's a couple things that need to be tweaked and changed. And then I think you'll be very happy with it. But right now, Like, I know it's not good, so I don't want to send it to you. And that's exactly like what he was saying. And where when you're working with somebody, especially an artist, the last thing you want them to do is hear themselves sounding really badly. You also know, if you're the engineer on the session, and in addition to the writer, in addition to somebody who's like, part of helping them make this thing a reality, there's so much more at stake also. Like, you really don't want them to hear an unfinished work when you in your head know all the things you have to do to make it finished, or at least listenable. What's the point of sharing this thing of you half naked, essentially, sounding ridiculous? It reflects on your ability to do your job also. So there's like, in other words, if you were to just throw up a scratch guitar or something, or program something in MIDI, it could sound crazy, ridiculously bad. However, you're going to replay the part with a guitar and plug it into an amp and mic it up, or whatever. They don't know all that. They just hear what you're sending them sounding like Tetris or whatever. So what I'm saying is, there's so much to what could be weird that might have to be done again. And the best thing to get from what he said is, there's people who are easy to work with, and there's people who make things very difficult. Now, when you're in a situation like that, rather than expose your soul to people and show them everything and all the imperfections, even in their own performance, because like I said, if singers are insecure, you don't want them to hear themselves in a bad light. Because also, think about it from this point of view. If an artist is not used to recording, and they've just done it a handful of times, even 10 times or whatever, but they're only used to hearing themselves after something's been mixed, then you sending them something before that is a ridiculously jarring experience. And they'll think you suck because it sounds, natural. Or in some cases, this particular person was a very good singer, so auto-tune wasn't necessary or anything, but that's not what I'm talking about. It was a timing thing, that certain words and phrases had to be moved around, and when I did it in the box by moving around the parts, it didn't feel right. It lost a lot of something, and it felt too weirdly robotic, but it needed to be moved because the timing was all messed up. And in this particular case, when I asserted myself and said, listen, I'm not going to send it to you, but you're 10 minutes away. Anytime you're available, I'm going to make time to finish this. It's not going to cost anything. The whole thing, by the way, wasn't a higher thing. I just wanted to do it because I wanted to work with this person, and I felt like they were a really great singer, and it was also like a kind of a getting to know you thing. So when you're in that phase of a getting to know you, all bets are off. This was also at a point where I had a second of free time, and it was easy for me to just, have a writing day. And it was something that was part of it that I was just like, all right, I'm going to give this a shot with this person. So it wasn't where they paid me to even do that. So in other words, none of this was actually something that they went out of pocket for. However, my request for them to come back to finish this thing was just too much for them. They couldn't take it. And it was like, I was holding back this thing that's half theirs, and how could I? And literally, I got reamed at, and the person happened to be a woman. But that doesn't matter whether it's a man or a woman. Anybody who talks to you very disrespectfully and comes at you all crazy, it really ruined any possible relationship I could have ever had with this particular person or anything. But if they're going to act like that, I didn't want a relationship or any sort of, working anything with this person. It wouldn't have worked because they were crazy. Now, when it came to something like that, it was a very cheap lesson to learn because I wasn't so invested when I found out the full scope of their insanity. Something I learned later, because there's always a reason, right? I learned later that this person had worked with other people, I think one in particular, who refused to send stuff to them all the time. They never sent anything, and it was a very traumatic experience. according, that's their words, working with this other person who never sent anything. And as a result, they flew off the handle when they thought I was going to be the same way. Something that's valuable to note is if a bunch of people act a certain way, it could be because that same person may have not been done with something. Like, I don't know the particulars of that situation. I don't know. But I could tell you from my point of view, artists will ask you to hear a mix before it's done. No, you can't hear it until it's done. When it's done, I've done everything I can to make it great. Then you're going to hear it. Until then, you cannot. And it's the same thing when it comes to producing. It's even more of a thing when it comes to that, because if you're producing a song for someone and your intention is to, like, see out your, like, work out your vision, you don't want them to hear it before you don't want them to hear it in that stage. It's only going to reflect badly on you. So I could see if the person was in the same place I was, why that would be the case. But for me, I felt like my request was so small and simple. I need you for another hour or two. Like, that's it. And once we have that, this thing will be exactly what the intention was. And until then, it's just not, it's not even there. It's not listenable. You got to come back. And this is something I've realized, is that if you can put somebody in a position where they have to be told no, like, in other words, if you tell no to somebody, you really get the sense of who they really are. They can fake who they are as long as it's yes, yes, yes. As long as you're kissing their butt and everything's going well, you'll get this fake personality. As long as they think they can always get what they want and manipulate, they will always smile. As soon as you tell them no and you don't give them what they want, the true personality comes out. So, in my opinion, it helps if there's something there that you want to talk about that you don't feel is right. Never hold back on it, especially relatively early on. It's almost like it's such a people person thing. And this is why producers have to be some of the most emotionally intelligent people on the planet. Because to be a good producer, people have to get along with you. So your tact for how to say, what you're going to say, when to say it, so important, so much more important than the actual words. So could there be a better way that I could have handled that? Possibly. There's always a better way, right? But the way I handled it showed their true colors so quickly, and I'm very lucky it happened early. So it's not that you want to test people, it's that you shouldn't hold back the way you feel, the way you think. If you are in a position where, like, you have to send something that's clearly undone, well, if they're 10 minutes away and it doesn't cost them anything, what exactly is the problem with doing what you want, which is, I need another hour or two to finish this thing. Like, what is it? And if you, like, there's no logic there that applies to, like, what I said, requiring and eliciting that sort of reaction from that person. So why did they give it to me? Because they're not all the way there. There's something screw loose going on. And because of that, it's not somebody you want to work with. This will come out in a bunch of different ways. It's not always clear, cut, and dry, where you have to say no to something and then they turn crazy on you. It could be other things too. It could be something like they want to blame you for something, like, that didn't work out well. In other words, like, let's say you guys work together on something and the song doesn't become a hit. Well, now your song is not a hit, just like the millions of other songs that didn't turn out to be a hit, because in order to make a hit, there's generally a team behind that. And if it's not a team, it could be one guy or two guys, but they're doing all the things, including promotion, crazy amounts of promotion. If you're not doing that, you can't just expect something great to get out there, no matter how great it is. To get it out there, promotion. It's part of all of it. It's the biggest part of it, I'd say. Having the great thing is essential, but if nobody ever knows it exists, it's really only as good as whoever hears it thinks it is. If you can get promotion behind you and you can generate some sort of marketing campaign there, now you all of a sudden have a way people can hear it an interest built around it. That's how hits are made. So I've never made a hit. I've heard great producers who've made hits talk about this specific thing exactly. So I know that that's the case. And in the case of like a Chapel Roan, you know, she was a master at marketing herself. And this is the same thing with like a Lady Gaga. She was a master at marketing herself. So the ones that actually broke through, such masters at getting their own, at getting the best of themselves to actually come through in enough ways for people to want to see them, hear them, listen to what they got to say. So the art and the talent has to be there, but the promotion and marketing is so key. So in a case like this, where maybe you work with somebody who, something they play for somebody, it's like they love it at the time, but later they tell you they don't love it. Later they tell you, oh, how could you, blah, blah, blah. It's like, whoa. You said you loved it at the time. And if you didn't love it, we would have made changes. But you said you loved it. Now, because you don't have a hit, you're going to come back and change your mind because you played it for 5 people and 3 of them didn't like it. Now you're going to say you don't like it or whatever. So if the person you're working with is just swaying in the breeze like a freaking sail on a ship, that's another person who is hard to work with. I'm not going to say should never work with them or something, because people make mistakes. People, could be led down the wrong path. Maybe they'll realize that they need to develop more confidence in their own decision making, which will prevent them from ever doing this thing where they love something at one time and then later, if it doesn't work, they look for somebody to blame. And if they look for somebody to blame and they blame you, don't let them just blame you without you maybe asserting the fact that it's their lack of confidence that's causing them to blame you, not what you did. If there's no right and no wrong, then nothing you did is wrong. You just asserted your opinion, which is what they hired you to do in the first place. If you're a producer for somebody, they're hiring you for your decision, for what you bring to the table, which includes your opinion, all of that. Now, could that be adjusted or changed or whatever if the artist wants something and there's a compromise there? Maybe, yeah. But that doesn't mean that if they love it and your decision-making is part of them loving it, no matter what happens later, they come back to you and get upset at you for something, that's somebody who's maybe not all the way there. So they need to seek some help to get there. And that includes, could be therapy, could be whatever, to develop some self-confidence. It could be stopping doing drugs, which mess with your mind. And as a result, they're all over the place. I mean, it could be anything. So what I'm saying is a wild card like that, also somebody who's not the best to work with. So it's very important to kind of suss out who are the wild cards when you're working with people, because the guys that you'll work with the most, or the girls that you'll work with the most, are the ones that are easy to work with. They're the ones that won't give you any sort of crap about anything. And they'll also be the ones that want to be fair. The fairness comes down to like what the split's going to be, or, all of that. The people that are the honest people, you bring it up once or half of it, you just start talking about it and they just go, yeah, fair. Whatever fair is, I'm in. Fair. Split it down the middle, split it halfway, split it a third, whatever it is. Those are the people that keep working with people over and over and over and over. You'll always have a co-writer in that person. The fair people, the ones that come at you any sort of other way, there's something up and you don't want to work with them. So I just find this is helpful information for anyone who's starting on their journey or on it and unsure about maybe something they did, because it's very easy to feel like you did something wrong when you didn't. And self-confidence plays such a role on all ends, especially the guy doing the work. Like if you are the producer or the writer or the, engineer, don't let that like tarnish and put a ding in your self-esteem or your self-worth because of somebody else's mental issues. You really got to be aware that the artist's world is full of people with mental issues. And as a result, you have to do what you're going to do to just sort of navigate it and stay on track and realize that you most likely are not the problem. That's the truth. So as long as you're fair As long as you do what you say you're going to do, you're not the problem. As long as your requests are simple, not like, yeah, next year sometime I'll send you a copy. No, you're 10 minutes away. You come down for an hour. We'll get this thing done, and then you'll have your version you want to listen to. Notice what Dan said in that video. He said, he talks about how if something's wrong, me and Chapel have a good relationship. She'll come in, she'll listen to the thing, and then if there's something wrong, we'll talk about it. We'll redo it. She'll come in and listen to the demo. So he's not even sending the demo to her. And she's part of the project. They're co-writing the thing together. He's producing for her. They're sitting there together working this thing out. And he's not even sending it to her. She's got to come in to hear the demo, to then realize the whatever. So this happens no matter who you're dealing with, like on any level. People can understand the problem so easily sitting in or standing in the room with you. And this gets a little different when people are across the globe, different states, all over the world. That is where it gets a little different. And sometimes, things have to be done differently. So I totally get it. If you're co-writing with somebody who's not there and stuff may be passed back and forth a lot. And I'm not saying you shouldn't ever pass stuff around. I'm not saying any of that. I'm just saying that you can do that with people. Like Ross said, the guy interviewing Dan, what Ross was saying, he's like, you could do that if they have in their head the how to beat this mentality. I know it's not finished mentality. If they understand the way the process works, if they understand how this is not a complete vision yet, how we're just trying to focus on this one thing to fix this, and then we can move to the next step. And at that point, this thing will really take a step forward. It's a very particular person, an artist who really understands things that you can do that with. You could do it with them. So it's really case by case basis. That's the truth. But I'm curious what you guys have experienced. Have you experienced similar things? I'm sure there's a lot of horror stories out there because I've heard others. I can't share them because they were told to me in confidence because a lot of these stories aren't positive. But I could share this one with you because it doesn't happen that often. I can't think of 4 times that's happened to me. But it's definitely happened that time, and it was the most intense. To the point where that person swore off talking to me. I ran into them once or twice and we were laughing and it was a fine time. No conversation other than that. And never apologized other than that. And here's the crazy kicker. I apologized. I apologized because my ego has nothing to lose by apologizing. I'll be the first to admit I'm wrong if I think I'm wrong about something. And in this particular situation, when I heard the backstory about how traumatic it was for her with the other person where she never got any of her stuff, I did feel bad. I felt bad that happened. Not that I said what I said, but that had happened to somebody and that they brought the baggage to the table. And as a result, I happened to trigger the baggage by stepping on a landmine. So I basically apologized for stepping on the landmine. And if I knew that, I probably would have acted a little bit differently. But maybe not. I might not have acted different. But the point is, it didn't cost me anything to apologize and to, I don't know if you call it swallow your pride or whatever. It didn't hurt me at all to do that. And I felt like maybe it could salvage the relationship. It didn't help at all. But at the same time, don't ever let your ego or your pride or any of that get in the way. That's just the last thing I want to end with. So hope you guys dug it. Hit the like button, subscribe, comment. If you haven't already, I appreciate it. You guys are awesome. Evan Jaffe, Custom Cut Studios. I'd love to hear your stories. You guys got this. Take it easy.